You know, if we had a fair election, this would be a cakewalk this year. It's unbelievable what's happening right now. Welcome to the Vince Coglianese Show. It's a Friday. Great to have you with us today. Coming up on the program, Lynn Patton will be joining us, a senior advisor to former President Trump. We'll talk to her about Joe Biden's new hate speech that he's giving today. He's supposed to give it in just minutes. He's usually late for these affairs. We'll be breaking down some of the audio as it occurs as well. Mark Green is here at 4:30, the congressman. Will talk to us about what's going on with the border and how quickly Alejandro Mayorkas can be impeached. Gabe Kaminsky joins us from the Washington Examiner at 5 o'clock today as we explore the left-wing forces behind all of this ballot rigging we're seeing take place across the country. And some economic data out today. E.J. Antoni joins us at 5:30 to give us the real story. You can talk to us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, it's a bad... We've had a bad run, haven't we, as a country these last few years with Joe Biden as president. And all of the stars are aligning in a normal political environment where you have a fair and equal election run well. You'd say, okay, this is over. There's nothing to it, right? Donald Trump would win re-election in a landslide. And we'd be off and running. We'd be headed towards a more secure border, a better economy, better job situation, everything. But that's not a sure thing in a world where the left will do literally anything it can, up to and including violating the law and the Constitution and certainly the will of the people in order to get their way, which is why they are rigging these ballots in places like Colorado, Maine, and beyond right now. They're removing Trump from the ballot entirely. They're ballot rigging. And it's obvious why they're doing this, because first of all, they have no scruples. And secondly, what they're staring at is polling data that shows that nobody's really buying any of this, fundamentally. I've got another new low Joe report for you today. I've got Breitbart's reporting, poll, Biden holds worst net approval rating for a president in modern history at this time in office. President Joe Biden, 81 years old, now holds the worst net approval rating in history at this time in office, 1,080 days into his tenure. That's according to 538 polling, and they found that this week, highlighting just how unpopular Biden is going into this presidential election just 10 months away. The following is the net approval rating of previous presidents in the modern era at the same time of their presidencies, and then they list it out. The only one who, the second place person, he's not even close, is Donald Trump. Joe Biden's net approval rating right now is negative 17.2. Negative 17.2, meaning his disapproval is much higher than his approval. Trump, at the same point in office, was negative 11.8, and that was with the entire media training its weapons on him. Beyond that, Obama, negative 0.6. Of course, you can tell based on the passage of time that these things have become more and more aggressive. As you go backwards, you're looking at Carter was at plus 9.6, if you can believe it. Clinton was at plus 11.2. H.W. was at plus 12.5. George W. Bush was at plus 20.3 at this point. That's wild in retrospect. But here we are. Here we are. So Joe Biden, negative 17.2. The worst approval rating at this point in any modern presidency. Biden's approval rating at the moment stands in the mid-30s. His disapproval rating in the mid-50s, according to 538. So Joe Biden, minutes from now, some number of minutes from now, when he pops out to a stage that I'm told, I haven't seen the images, but Corey tells me that they have American flags up today. They're trying to make this look a little more patriotic than the one they put together in 2022, the one where he stood in front of the blood red light and slammed on the lectern and screamed in those awful still images of a raging president angry at the country for not agreeing with him in lockstep. So today he will demonize Republican voters, presumably to cast them once again as extremists, to try and scare his base into voting for him. Because he's not running on a positive vision. In fact, barely anyone approves of his presidency. So the hope here is, well, maybe they'll hate the other guy or be scared of the other guy enough that they'll support Biden again. Over at the White House, things are gloomy. The bosses there are throwing a cheer-up party for bummed-out White House staffers. Axios has a report today that the chief of staff, Jeff Zients, has decided that it's time to throw an office party for the staff because everyone's so sad. Well, they don't say that. They say they want to celebrate their last 3 years. I'm not sure what they would be celebrating. So again, this is meant to be, as Axios puts it, a morale booster. They need a morale booster. And they want to steal the team for the final sprint ahead of the election. Zients, Axios reports, a millionaire former businessman, knows that White House staff have a grueling year ahead of them. He's using his personal funds to convey appreciation for Biden aides who spent most of their waking hours at work. The invite was emailed, except for Joe. Joe's not among the people who spent most of his waking hours at work. The invite was emailed Wednesday evening to hundreds of aides and officials who work in the executive office of the president. Quote, to ensure we're able to include as many staff as possible, this invitation is non-transferable and does not include a guest, Zients writes. Okay, so no plus ones to this party. You're not allowed to bring a guest with you. No spouses, if you've got one of those. No significant others. No polyamorous arrangements. Nothing. Just you by yourself can come. The party will be held later in the month at a private venue in Northern Virginia. How exciting. Then they go on to say that Zients has been trying to restore a sense of normalcy at the White House after COVID-19. But people are all bummed out over at the White House. They're all angry at Biden. They don't. First of all, it's not that he's doing poorly for the country. And most of these guys are dyed-in-the-wool lefties, so they're just angry that he's not being left-wing enough. You haven't wrecked enough! And that's making them has the sads. That's what's happening at the White House. In fact, over at the Department of Education, do you see this guy this week? How old is this kid? He's got to be, I don't know, 30? If that? He's a top advisor at the Education Department. He's resigned very publicly. He's throwing a tantrum that Joe Biden isn't attacking Israel enough as president of the United States. The New York Times reports this week a top advisor at the Education Department has resigned over President Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. The second official to do so, as the administration faces divisions over U.S. support for Israel's bombardment in Gaza. The advisor, Tariq Habash, who is the department's only Palestinian-American political appointee, announced on Wednesday that he could no longer serve an administration that had put millions of innocent lives in danger. In an interview on Thursday, Mr. Habash said he had come to the decision after feeling no empathy and no recognition of my own humanity by the president. I care about helping people, said Mr. Habash, who was born in the United States but is the descendant of Palestinian Christians who were expelled from Jaffa in 1948 when the Israeli state was established. I thought the president did too, he said. He said he can no longer serve an administration that has put millions of innocent lives in danger. Of course, he's not referring to American lives. He's referring to what he says are the lives of innocent Palestinian Arabs. Now, in case you're wondering how serious this guy is, here he is. I found video of him. He did an interview. I was like, has he done any interviews? Sure enough, he did an interview on MSNBC to announce the news with Joy Reid. So it's not like it's not like he's subjecting himself to like any real journalism or anything. And he appeared and he showered up. He did his hair up. He looks like Weird Al. You ever see Weird Al? He's got the curly hair. It's long. Here he is on MSNBC. Joy Reid very excited to have this exclusive.
And joining me now for his first television interview since resigning late today is Tariq Habash, now a former Department of Education Special Assistant. Tariq, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you started out on the Biden campaign as an idealist.
Yeah.
What was the final straw in saying, I can't stay here anymore?
You know, Joy, I worked on the administration's agenda for the last 3 years. What
are the chances anybody within their right minds hires this guy? Like, you know what I mean? He's throwing a hissy fit that the president of the United States is doing something he doesn't want him to do?
I volunteered on the campaign, helping shape the education policy agenda, and we've done a lot of really great work.
Like
unfortunately,
what? Name one thing. What was one thing that you did well in the education department while Joe Biden's been president of the United States?
All of that great work has been completely overshadowed because of the president's complete unwillingness to demand an immediate and permanent ceasefire. And it is creating immense danger for millions of Palestinians in Gaza, but also for Americans here at home.
Yeah, you cited in your letter.
Any conversation about the attack in Israel? Anything? Nothing about Hamas's terror attack? No? No. All right, so anyway, that's Joy Reid. And this. So they're all grumpy over in the Biden administration. They don't think that he's being left-wing enough. And at the White House, the tension is spilling out between White House staffers as well. Did you know that Karinge is upset about John Kirby? Corey, have you seen this report today? Yeah. Karinge is ticked. This may not come as a surprise to you. Karinge is ticked that Admiral John Kirby is getting to lead the adult press briefing every day at the White House. Isn't it a funny thing? What a weird dog and pony show they have going on. So nominally, Karine Jean-Pierre is supposed to be the White House press secretary, the person who takes the questions and answers the questions in the Brady press briefing room. But on a daily basis, she is upstaged by somebody who's more capable at spinning than she is, John Kirby. So John Kirby conducts what I refer to as the adult press briefing. He usually goes first. And it's a funny thing because he doesn't actually pick the people who ask him questions. Do you know who does that? Karinge. Karinge stands on the side of the room and she points out somebody. She said, Peter, NBC, or whatever, whatever their names are, various outlets. She picks them out to ask questions of John Kirby. Now, that's not true of everybody. She doesn't do that for Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor. She doesn't do that. He gets to pick his own questioners. So why does John Kirby need hand-holding from Karinge, of all people? Isn't that interesting? It's a weird power struggle going on, and the Axios has a report on it today. Quoting all of this. They say they share a podium and a mutual frustration. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre and the National Security Council's John Kirby frequently split the podium at media briefings. But behind the scene, their relationship is fraught with tension, White House sources tell Axios. As President Biden heads into a tough re-election campaign, his top-ranking spokespeople are at odds while navigating a situation in which there's one press secretary in name, but two in practice, one for domestic policy, the other for foreign policy. Some of the tension stems from how much time each gets at the podium each day. Kirby, a Biden favorite who's become the public face of the administration's response to the Israel-Hamas war, has told people he'd like to be White House press secretary one day. What a shock. Oh, he's ambitious. Jean-Pierre has told people she plans to stay in the job through the election and beyond if Biden wants her, and that he has asked her not to leave. It's probably because she smells good or something. Can you stay? A White House official told Axios that Kirby never volunteers that he would like to be press secretary, I'm sure. Jean-Pierre and Kirby have split the podium in the White House press room more frequently since the war began in October, aggravating tensions that began in the spring of 2022 when Jen Psaki departed as press secretary. They both keep appearing at the podium together for one reason: Biden likes it. Kirby has become more influential publicly and behind the scenes as he's developed a close relationship with the president. Biden frequently asks for Kirby to personally brief him. Senior advisor Anita Dunn recently had Kirby start traveling on Air Force One for domestic trips, not just international ones. In the more than 30 press briefings and gaggles since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, Jean-Pierre Karinge has briefed reporters solo just once during a gaggle on Air Force One. Kirby has accompanied her at every other briefing except for 3. That was when she was joined by Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor. So they point out Jean-Pierre runs the press briefings, and then she selects which reporters even ask Kirby questions, rather than letting him choose. Some White House aides see that practice as a sign of Jean-Pierre being insecure. You see that? It's a power struggle for her. She is so insecure in this job, she feels like I have to at least be involved when John Kirby's receiving questions. The aides note that Sullivan calls on reporters himself when he attends the briefing. So I guess she doesn't feel as threatened by him, or he's bigfooting her somehow. But there you go. Look at that. So they're all fighting amongst themselves over who gets to spin this garbage, right? Imagine like being like, boy, I really want to be White House press secretary for this White House, and fighting with each other over that role. That's insane to me. It's like fighting over who gets to be closest to the dumpster fire without the benefit of the warmth. It's like wild. Wild. So Karinge Jean-Pierre, John Kirby now fighting. Karinge would like to do the adult press briefing, but it doesn't look like there's going to be a resolution to this anytime soon because Joe Biden is president. And, resolving conflicts, not really his thing. He's better at causing them. In fact, he's probably doing that as we speak. We'll have updates for you coming up. Well, we're off and running. Joe Biden, just a few minutes behind his scheduled time, finally appeared on stage. Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, the scene of the birth of American democracy. Is Biden the warm-up back for the end of American democracy? He's already used the phrase, the soul of America. That's a John Meacham line, so we know who wrote this speech. Here's Biden moments ago saying that we nearly lost our country on January 6, 2021.
Today we gather in a new year, some 246 years later, just one day before January 6th. A date forever seared in our memory because it was on that day that we nearly lost America. Lost it all.
Yeah, remember when the QAnon shaman stood on the Senate dais? I thought to myself, I think we're losing America. I think America's gone. I think he gets it now. It's like a game of capture the flag. It belongs to him now.
Today, we're here to answer the most important of questions. Is democracy still America's sacred cause? I mean it.
Guys, party's removing his opponent from the ballot, rigging ballots all across the country. We're here to answer the question about democracy. We're not done with her yet.
This is not
She's still got a little life in her. We'll finish that off.
Rhetorical, academic, or hypothetical. Whether democracy is still America's sacred cause is the most urgent question of our time. And it's what the 2024 election is all about.
Well, you can barely get it out. A tired Joe Biden at Valley Forge today. We'll bring you updates from the divisive speech that he's giving in front of Old Glory. Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Lynn Patton joins us, an advisor to former President Trump, finance director for Patriot Legal Defense Fund. We'll react to Joe Biden's ongoing speech from Valley Forge right now, where he's trying to sow division in the country and scare people into voting for him this year. Will it work? Well, we'll see. We'll talk to Lynn Patton about that. Congressman Mark Green joins us at 4:30 today. At 5 o'clock from the Washington Examiner, Gabe Kaminsky. And then at 5:30, we talk the economy with our in-house economist, E.J. Antoni. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We'll keep our eyes open for some of the clips here from the Valley Forge speech and bring them to you as necessary. A lot of this is a repeat. I was listening on the break here. A lot of this is just a repeat of things that he has said, and the people who represent the interests, the power of the Democrat Party, have said over and over and over again that they're the only party that cares about democracy, and that democracy is on the line, and the only way to save the country is if you keep Democrats in power, and that January 6th, the high holy day of January 6th, was an insurrection, and that America almost ended on that day. One of the interesting things Biden said just a moment ago, which was kind of amusing in a way, was that Donald Trump is obsessed with the past. Me and Kamala are obsessed with the future. Really? What is this speech about? The past. It's literally entirely about an event that the Biden administration has used as a predicate to imprison their political opponents by the thousands. And he's still talking about it to this very day. The mostly peaceful protest of January 6, 2021. I saw John Nolte over at Breitbart using that phrase. I think he's been using that for a while. That's true, though. By the CNN standard, it was a mostly peaceful event. It was. And here you have Biden trying to exploit it still in order to get reelected, rather than give any sort of positive vision for the country. Boy, they are divisive. They are. Say what you will about Trump. Trump's aggression is always directed at these powerful people who typically either strike him or the American people first, right? He's always been, the phrase has always been, and by now it's almost become, cliche, but that he's a counterpuncher. That Trump's a counterpuncher. Well, that's true. I mean, Trump, even in his unfair attacks, he's only attacking people typically when they've attacked him first. In fact, I think it's always the case. Not true in Biden's case. Biden and the people around him, vicious contempt for the people who don't support them. And if you're looking for evidence of that, look no further than the ballot rigging that they're doing right now, all across the country. Gabe Kaminsky is going to talk to us about this at 5 o'clock. This effort, this dark money effort funded by the very same people who funded Biden's placement in the Oval Office, all across the country to remove options, whether it's in the Democrat primary, they've been removing his primary opponents from the ballot, or in the general election, they're removing Trump, rigging these ballots because they're scared to death that voters are actually going to pick anybody but Biden. So, again, we'll keep our ears to that today. But, let's, I do want to bring you some fun news here. There was, I don't know why NBC did this. NBC had 2 women sit down with Vivek Ramaswamy yesterday. And the audio is just fantastic. One of them is Dasha Burns. I'm sorry, I don't know the other reporter off the top of my head, but the 2 of them, I don't know why, they needed 2 women to handle Vivek rather than the normal one-on-one interview. And boy, it is amazing. It really is amazing. Take a listen here. This is Dasha Burns asking Vivek if he knows who the shooter Dylan Roof is, and starts asking him more questions about, hey, why did you treat that Washington Post reporter so poorly when she asked you about white supremacy? It is crazy how off the ball these networks are.
Let's talk about white supremacy and what happened last night for a moment, because when you were talking to reporters last night, you called white supremacy a myth. When someone asked you about Dylan Roof, you said you didn't know who that is. Have you looked up what happened in 2015?
Yeah, look, I said this last night. Invidious racial discrimination is wrong no matter how it happens. But if a Washington Post reporter is asking me almost like a catechism, whatever question I said, I'm against invidious racial discrimination, whatever form it takes, but says, do you denounce white supremacy? It's incumbent on us for us to define what white supremacy is. I wrote my book, Woke Inc., and I've written about the detailed understanding of what the popular understanding of these terms have come to mean. Do you believe punctuality is a vestige of white supremacy, Dasha?
Look,
because if you don't, then you have a disagreement about many of the people who are defining those terms, or the written word, or the use, or the nuclear family. These aren't my words. These are the words of intellectual proponents from Ibram Kendi to the Ayanna Presleys to BLM that have said these are vestiges of white supremacy.
Yeah, he's not wrong, and good for him for bringing this up. She was staggering the moment he brought that up. Wait a second, so you think that white people are the only ones who could be punctual? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? She doesn't have an answer to it, and he's right about this because, remember, the African American History Museum right here in Washington, D.C. had included a chart about whiteness at their museum that listed out things like the nuclear family is an attribution of white culture. The nuclear family. They also said punctuality is a part of white culture. Hard work, stable family structure, individual decision making. Isn't that so? This was listed at the African American History Museum. And so Vivek confronts her with this. Hey, what about this? And she doesn't know what to say because, of course, like Dasha Burns, I don't know if she's a smart person or not, but she's not ready for it because he did the homework and she didn't. And it's sad because what she's engaging is in a political debate. It's not in any way good faith. Like, do you really think Vivek Ramaswamy, the Indian guy, abides white supremacy? Is that what you're putting forward? Come on. So Dasha starts losing it. You can tell she starts to become emotionally incontinent. She can't hold back. She's freaking out that she's on camera being embarrassed by the truth. And so she starts kind of getting a little hysterical here, to be honest with you.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
we can't have it both ways.
What you do, though.
We have to have an honest discussion.
Straw man arguments.
This is not a straw man.
You brought up Jussie Smollett as the best example of white supremacy.
was the hottest thing in news in the back of a fake actual attack on him.
Now, she keeps interrupting him here, but let me just point out the Jussie Smollett thing is a perfect thing to bring up. Because the reason Vivek brought it up to the Washington Post reporter in the first place was that there is so little white supremacy available for Jussie Smollett to try and advance his career that he had to hire 2 black guys to pretend to be white supremacists. That's the point of that anecdote. And she's like, this is a straw man. No, it is a textbook example of what's really happening in the country. And Jussie knew that there would be a willing media waiting for him to advance this horse hockey so that he could advance his career. And it was a lie. It was a scam. It was so lazy, too. It was so sloppily put together because Jussie thought that the press would just run with it hook, line, and sinker. And by the way, they largely did. But there were enough pieces to it that normal people were like, wait a second, this doesn't add up. Somebody yelled, this is MAGA country in the middle of Chicago in the middle of a sub-zero night while you were leaving Subway? What? They dumped bleach on you? Help me understand this. It was a scam. So anyway, Vivek brought it up. Dasha's freaking out. She's like, that's a straw man.
It was the hottest thing in news in the back of a fake actual attack on him that we have to contend with.
And yet you have examples like the Buffalo shooter in New York just in 2022.
You have other examples.
But you are also cherry picking when you bring up Jussie Smollett.
I'll look at all of the statistics. More black on black crime. If you really care about actual crime against black Americans, let's get to the root causes of it in the inner cities of this country.
The Anti-Defamation League tracked a 38% increase.
Yeah, look, this piece too, and he brings it up to a certain extent. Black Lives Matter, I've said for a while, if you believe Black Lives Matter, then you should want to catch their killers. If you believe Black Lives Matter, you should make it your mission to catch the person who is killing them, whoever that is. And it turns out it's not some looming white supremacist threat. Like, the whole thing is like a scam. It's a total scam. And the media is not interested in solving that problem. As black death increases in the United States, homicide deaths, Southeast Washington, D.C., we just got the record for this century. Press isn't trying to bring an end to that, and there's no aggression around that. Al Sharpton's not protesting in the street today about that. Instead, he's going after Bill Ackman for demanding excellence at Harvard. It's also cartoonish. So NBC still desperately clinging to the lies, and Vivek walloping them on their own air with the truth.
Crime against black Americans, let's get to the root causes of it in the inner cities of this country.
The Anti-Defamation League tracked a 38% increase in white supremacist propaganda last year.
Who's tracking that?
The Anti-Defamation League.
Yeah, the ADL, I don't think is a particularly credible source when they have cherry-picked information.
When we're talking?
So another piece here, and there's only so many things you could possibly say. So he's doing a great job here, but she said something like, oh, the ADL tracked a 37% increase in white supremacy propaganda. Is that what she said? Something like that. She was referring to information. I'll play it again just to verify.
White supremacist propaganda last
year. Who's tracking that?
Okay, all right. So white supremacist propaganda. All right, so what was the number of white supremacist propaganda statements 2 years ago? Let's just compare the total numbers. Okay, and what is it last year? Oh, she didn't say any of that. So compared to what? You ever see a new company start up? Anywhere. You see this all over the place. A new company will start up. It'll be their first year. They'll be selling product. Whatever that product is, they're selling widgets. And they'll, year over year, they'll increase the number of widgets they're selling by 100%. So they could have sold 2 widgets last year. They'll sell 4 widgets the following year. And in other words, they've increased the sale of their widgets by 100%. They'll refer to themselves as the fastest growing widget company in America. That'll be the advertising phrase. It's the fastest growing. Well, you're starting from a very small baseline. So what numbers are we talking about here? And what even qualifies as white supremacist propaganda by the Anti-Defamation League, which is an arm of the Democrat Party? This is not some sort of neutral arbiter of decency. It's a Joe Biden political action committee. So they say that the white supremacy is increasing. Oh, okay. Can you give us some sense of what the hell that even means?
Tracked a 38% increase in white supremacist propaganda last year.
Who's tracking that?
The Anti-Defamation League.
Yeah, the ADL, I don't think is a particularly credible source when they have cherry-picked information.
When we're talking about
I would suggest look at there's a table, 2x2 table, federal law enforcement data, which you could say what you do. Maybe we shouldn't believe that either. But
okay,
look at black on Asian crime, black on black crime,
the FBI
white on black crime.
Notice she won't let him lay out the data. Now, if this was a real conversation that was dedicated to enlightening the audience and providing answers and tell me more about you, there's no curiosity. Journalism is supposed to be that you have some curiosity about the people you're covering. Who are you? What do you really believe? Am I misrepresenting your views? Please share what you actually believe with our audience. That's not what this is. No, you can't look good. No. I got a different piece of data. It's going to hurt you. Wait a second. Is this an interview or not? What is this supposed to be? And so Vivek sees right through it.
Federal law enforcement data, which you could say what you do. Maybe we shouldn't believe that either. But
okay.
look at black on Asian crime, black on black crime,
the
white
FBI
on black
hate crime
crime.
statistics. That's a law enforcement agency. 59.1% was based on race, ethnicity, and ancestry, saying hate crimes rose 12% between 2020 and 2021.
Look at the absolute crimes themselves.
They're playing some games here, too. So, Dasha, what do you mean by hate crimes? And who is committing those hate crimes? Of course, remember we had a rash of black on Jewish hate crime attacks that were taking place in cities over the past few years that get included in the data, but then they get used by the media as a carve out for, oh, there's like white supremacist hate crimes on the rise in the city. You see what I mean? Or anti-Semitic. That's kind of the catch-all. Anti-Semitic hate crimes are on the rise, and then they infer that white people are attacking Jewish people. It's all a game to these people. They think this is like great. This is like a big power struggle. But it's fun with data. It doesn't actually tell you anything. It misleads you about what's happening. So Vivek says, well, wait a second. What do you mean by a hate crime? Can you be more specific? Can you give me any details about what any of this means? Are you even aware?
What they classify as a hate crime is itself a political judgment. I think that when you actually care about protecting life, if you want to say Black Lives Matter, let's look at where Black lives are actually being lost.
Yes.
It's in the cities at the heart of other Black Americans and criminals that are restrained by the absence
that we talk about as well, but are we supposed to ignore?
Oh, she pretends. Oh, yeah, we talk about that. When? Please show us the 7 seconds of tape you're referring to. When do you talk about that? When is that a part of NBC's coverage?
Talk about as well, but are we supposed to ignore white supremacist hate crimes?
We're not supposed to ignore any kind of crime, Dasha. That's what I say. But what I see is a selective reporting. Take the Nashville Transgender Shooter Manifesto. Every shooter manifesto in a mass shooting has been released within 48 hours, except for that one shooter in Nashville. Now, it ended up being leaked. What do you see? It wasn't a white supremacist. It was somebody that was actually making fun of using derogatory terms. I believe.
Okay, so why are you okay talking about that manifesto and not talking about the manifesto from the 2015?
I'm more than okay talking about both, but what I'm asking is, why is the mainstream media suppress that one? Why did the police suppress that one? Why was that the one shooter manifesto that of all of the mass shootings, every other shooter manifesto has been released? I'm focused on that one because that's the one that's been hidden from us. And it comes back to the point of my candidacy and the way I'm going to run this country. Trust the people with the truth.
Yeah, I mean, he's so much better than she is. And you can tell and she knows it too. That's why she's panicking, because she starts spazzing out during the interview. She's not able to hold it together, be sober. And so she's projecting a lot of things to the audience that she's not intending to, but fundamentally, she's just way out of her league here. And he's like, well, wait a second. Why does the press obsess over these manifestos from certain events? And it's not all mass shootings are from these deranged white guys who are, by the way, usually on some sort of psychotic drug. In fact, most mass shootings are actually gang shootings. Left out of the media conversation. They never mention that. But he brings up the details, and she panics. She doesn't know what to do. Anyway, it makes for great audio for sure, and it's a masterclass in the way that all conservatives, all Republicans, all normal people should handle all of these interviews. One big lesson from this that I take away, I've said this for years, and I'll repeat it now. And I know there's a lot of people here who work in Washington within the sound of my voice who are working on the side of decency and helping the country out. Don't do an interview if you're going to go into a contentious environment where they're going to clip you up and only play 4 words of your 45-minute conversation. If they're cutting it up for a tiny news package and it's going to be an adversarial package, you know it out the gate, don't do that. That's stupid. They're going to do it to hurt you. They're going to try and string together whatever words they can to make it as bad as possible for you. Do it like Vivek did, which is, yes, I'll sit, but it's got to be long form. Play it out. People should see the back and forth. They should see the whole conversation. If you're going to do it, preferably do it live. As Bill O'Reilly once said famously, do it live. Sit down, have the live conversation. Much better, because then you get to control the outcome. You live and die by that. And the very last piece of advice I'll give you on this, if you have to, for whatever reason, do this in a pre-recorded setting, make sure you tape your own side of it. You have an alibi tape. So when they misrepresent you, you can dunk all over. All right, let's go to the phones. We've got Sarah in Montgomery County, line 2. Sarah, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Sarah. What's on your mind?
Okay. Well, I tagged you on Twitter for that clip that you were playing on Vivek and that ungodly woman. Anyway, when I was watching it, it's the first time I've really gotten the feeling that Vivek is for real. I mean, I wasn't going to run him for president or anything because I wasn't sure. He seemed too chirpy. But how does he feel? I see that he feels what he was talking about MLK.
Yeah.
And when we were coming together, and then all of a sudden it turns the other way and there's this division. And I really got that he's very legit. Did you?
I think so too. I think Vivek is a man who's constantly learning and constantly educating himself and then trying to apply it for a better outcome for the country. I really do. I mean, he's an ambitious guy, no question, but he's definitely got his finger on the pulse. It's the reason why people are thrilled to see him do this. There's just, unfortunately, so few who go into these environments and succeed, and he's done it a bunch of times. So I'll do credit to him for that. Sarah, thank you. Yeah. I think we have a lot of great patriots out there, like Vivek, like Sarah, and it all adds up to this great country. Let's hold on to it. How about we? Coming up, we're going to get a reaction to Biden's speech just wrapped up in Valley Forge from Representative for former President Donald Trump.